Hi everyone, Ed Amoroso here from Tag Cyber, and I am sitting with my friend Phil Quade, the Chief Information Security Officer for Fortinet. Welcome, Phil.
Hi, Ed. Happy to be here.
Welcome to New York City today.
Big town. Happy to be part of it.
And hot. I think it must be 100% humidity the last couple of days.
I felt that.
So glad to have you here. Now, Phil, had a great career in government and industry. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm blessed to be working for a great company called Fortinet right now. It's a Silicon Valley innovator with a worldwide presence. But a lot of people ask me about how I got to Fortinet.
Yeah.
And I spent 33 plus years at the National Security Agency.
Right.
With this fascinating career. I loved every minute of it. And now I'd like to take some of those things, those techniques, those highly specialized and effective techniques that we did at the National Security Agency, and apply them to build a better cybersecurity company.
Yeah. You were there when the Orange Book was being put together, weren't you?
I was.
It's a book that anybody over 40 remembers, and under 30 maybe never even heard of. It was quite a work, right?
It was ahead of its time. It introduced some great concepts like TCBs, Trusted Computing Bases, which I know that you had a hand in helping influencing the standard and actually creating products as well.
Yeah. If only we could have kept some of those concepts. Like I often think, what would happen if multi-level security had somehow found a better market? We might not have like as many worms and break-ins, right? I mean, if you had labeling things and enforcing policy.
Same with authentication.
Yeah.
I oftentimes say that if we had solved the authentication problem early on, it's the equivalent of solving the world peace for internet security. You know, authenticating people to machines, data to processes, software and applications.
You could argue that may be the most important primitive, right, in architecture. Like, who are you, and can you provide evidence of whatever you just told me?
So I like to use your term. I sometimes relate it to, I ask, well, what in the fundamental sciences, I believe you can describe everything by either chemistry or physics. Yeah. And so I ask the question, well, what are the primitives or the fundamental elements of cybersecurity? And I think that's one of them. It's authentication. I don't know what the whole list is, but you could even argue that privacy is one of those, right? In order to address the problems of information sharing or cybersecurity at speed and scale, we're going to have to solve the problems of detecting and mitigating privacy risk at speed and scale. So I often ask the high-performance teams I get a chance to work with, what are the primitives of cybersecurity? And let's make sure we're doing those really, really well.
Cool. So what brought you to Fortinet? What attracted you about the company?
Fortinet has technologies and strategies that reminded me of how we've done some business back in my old job. So I wanted to join a company that was also able to do things at speed and scale. So specifically, Fortinet has something called a security fabric.
They do use the same term, right?
The same term, and guess what it does? It connects the different solutions that Fortinet offers that might work in, say, at the endpoint, the midpoint, the cloud, at the carrier, and it gets each of those security solutions to work together as a team. So not only does it become more effective, but it helps reduce the complexity, because you might have the best products out there, but if the wetware fails you, software, hardware, and wetware, the human frailty can't handle the complexity of managing these great systems, you're not going to have good security. Your
CEO is quite an engineer. That seems like an engineering culture at Fortinet. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, there's to his credit, he's also a businessman. There's in Silicon Valley, if you successfully start up a company, sell it for $1 billion, you're a godlike figure in Silicon Valley, and Fortinet's Ken Z not only did that, but he's now done it twice. So Fortinet is his second $1 billion company, and one of the reasons why I'm there is that I told you earlier, is to help take some of these really, really high-end techniques to address the problems of speed and scale. But in addition to that, it's to help the company grow from a $1 billion company to a $10 billion company.
Wow.
Because the things that you do as a startup aren't necessarily the same things you would do all the time when going to a $10 billion company.
It's different practices. Is that what you think that's part of the value prop when people are buying Fortinet products? Is it this this drive to size and scale and efficiency and innovation. You know, those are all words you say about big companies, big established companies. Is that kind of what you get, like
right.
small company feel with all the big company attributes?
Oh, that's a great way of saying it. We haven't used that as a marketing slogan, but in reality, that's
you're welcome to trademark that if you like.
In reality, that's I think that's what we have. I mean, that's the invigoration I get by working in Fortinet. It's a very, very innovative company. Yet it's by volume, by units shipped, it outsells Cisco, Juniper, Palo Alto, Checkpoint. We outsell them in terms of numbers of security appliances shipped per year massively. So it's this big worldwide company, but it's maintained that innovation flavor. So again, what we need to do is sustain the innovation part of the company, but when appropriate, build in some enduring, repeatable processes that allow you to grow to a larger size. Right now, we're about to launch inside our company something that we call risk spiders, and as ominous that sounds, it's not what you think. So what we've done as an executive team at Fortinet is we've identified the top 12 bad consequences we need to avoid from a cybersecurity perspective, and then are saying, what are the risk spiders? How do we measure the threat, the vulnerability, and the bad consequence in terms of severity? And then we're looking to drive down and mitigate either the consequence, the threat, or the vulnerability.
Wow, I love that. What are a couple of the things of the 12? What are a couple I should be worried about?
Sure. So not too surprising, but theft of IP, right? That would be one. So what's the consequence? What's the vulnerability? What's the risk? But also, what's the insider threat? What's the supply chain, but not threat, supply chain risk, insider risk.
Threats.
Right. But it can also be something softer, like what's the risk of getting your brand sullied by a major vulnerability compromise?
Yeah. You know, I don't think that contradicts the innovation thing at all. Like, for example, if we were to design an assembly line for a factory, we might come up with something very innovative. But once it's in place, a production line, like anything, has to have clear, repeatable practice. So I think you can innovate, but when you're operationalizing, you can have chaos.
So that's encouraging, and because I think that's one of my roles in the company is to help sustain the great innovation that we have, and then where practical and appropriate, help institutionalize some of these things into repeatable processes that are less personality dependent.
Now, you and I have a lot of runway behind us together.
We do.
So we can probably, extrapolate our experience out and make some predictions. So I'm going to ask you to go out on a limb and help us. What is going to happen in the next 10, 15 years in cyber? I'll give you a couple choices.
Okay.
One would be we muddle along the way we've been muddling. Another is things get really bad, like some terrible things happen. And the third is things get really good, but before you agree to answer number 3, you'd have to help me understand why things get better, because I think they've gotten worse the last few years.
My crystal ball looks like this. I expect the industry and the country and the world at large to embrace solutions that are based on automation and integration. Again, to address the problems of speed and scale, you have to embrace automation and integration.
I agree.
So I'm happy to see the favored winds blowing behind, for example, artificial intelligence. So that's a term and a science that went out of vogue for a good 25 years. But what it really is having well scrubbed data, appropriately labeled, and having risk-based decision engines that can help assist with human-level decision making.
Neural nets.
Yeah, so I expect that. I expect automation and integration and putting humans above the loop rather than having humans in the loop all the time. And I hope I'm positive that will get us to a better place.
Fortinet is lucky to have you. Their customers are lucky to have you, and I feel very lucky that you spent some time with us today.
So you're kind. Fortinet is honored to serve the commercial sector, the government sector, and the critical infrastructure sector as well. And thanks for helping us get out that message.
Thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. And we'll see you next time.